Hi to those waving. Welcome to everybody. Good evening. I'm going to go ahead and get started while people are still filtering in. That's just fine. Welcome back to our first presentation of 2023. Happy New Year, everybody. These are a series of webinars that were created to create opportunities for shared learning around marine-based Indigenous protected and conserved areas, or IPCAs. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from our own Sherilyn Young. She'll refresh us on IPCAs, and she'll talk about some of the dedicated work being done here in Nova Scotia. For those of you who are new to joining us, my name is Beck Borchert. I'm the Marine Protected Areas Coordinator with the Gwillimumaglusuwahan. I'm still learning how to say that, so I think as these webinars continue, you'll sort of see me learning and hopefully getting better, noting that our Executive Director is on the line and some language speakers as well. Please forgive me, I tried. I'd like to just introduce our organization a little bit. The KMK was created to oversee the negotiations and consultation process between the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia, the province, and the government of Canada. We're governed and we receive our mandates from the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs, and collectively we work on broader nation issues for the Mi'kmaq of Nova Scotia. So these webinars are a collective effort with other Mi'kmaq organizations. Our partners include the Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources. They represent the 5 Mi'kmaq communities on Cape Breton Island in Nova Scotia. UNIR was formed to ensure the sustainable use and protection of natural resources while also maintaining Unama'ki Mi'kmaq traditions and worldviews. And they've been amazing to work with, and welcome to those of you who are joining us from UINR. We also work with the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq. They're a nonprofit that works to proactively promote and assist Mi'kmaq community initiatives towards self-determination and enhancement of community. Lastly, we're also working with Oceans North, who supports marine conservation in partnership with Indigenous and coastal communities. And so we are a group of organizations working to bring these webinars to you guys today. And so on behalf of all of us, we do have some housekeeping to go through. As more people filter in, we'll go through that. So as always, we'll ask you to please keep your videos off and your microphones off as well during the presentation. We do hope for lots of questions and lots of comments. You can make them in the chat, and our facilitator Heidi will be monitoring the chat, and we'll go through all the Q&A afterwards. The presentation portion tonight is open to anybody, which is new for this webinar series. But just a reminder that the last 30 minutes, so 7 till 7:30, will be for our Mi'kmaq participants only. And so we'll ask if that doesn't apply to you to just step away at that time and leave it to the Mi'kmaq participants. If you want to review the webinars, they'll be posted on our YouTube channel. So we are going to be recording tonight, but I want to be really clear that while the presentation portion is going to be recorded, the Q and answer will not be shared. It'll not be posted, it'll not be made public, and we'll just be looking back on it to identify any themes for tonight. Before we really get started, we want to make sure that we start our webinar series off correctly. And so we're going to be starting and ending with prayers from KMKNO's own Allison Bernard. Allison has a strong passion for Mi'kmaq rights. His father was chief for his community for 25 years, and Al himself is a former police officer who left to pursue public office, where he was a council member for 10 years in Eskazoni. Al himself has fought for Mi'kmaq rights and has won court cases in Nova Scotia and at the Supreme Court level. He's proud to say he's one of the first Mi'kmaq to introduce moose hunting again in 1987 after his court victory. As a strong advocate of Mi'kmaq rights, Al's extremely proud to be at the forefront of Mi'kmaq rights and reconciliation here in Nova Scotia. And you've got a great color on your wall today, Al. On a personal level, Al wanted to share that he's a hunter, a fisherman, and has been a national level athlete all his life for hockey and fastball. Today, Al's more relaxed. He enjoys life as a grandfather and venturing into the wilderness on these winter days. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Al. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Beck, for your kind words. Well, Audie, as Beck said, I am Mi'kmaq. Very proud to be a Mi'kmaq. I'm a very strong Mi'kmaq speaker, and my beliefs sometimes worry me on how much I am Mi'kmaq or how strong I am when it comes to connecting to land, resources, everything around us. You know, it's one thing to be passionate about stuff, but to actually really to connect to nature and environment and our world, no matter how messed up it is today. I feel that we're the last resource or last line, not last resource, but the last line of defense, really, through our treaty rights and, 7 generations that looked after us before. It's upon us right now to look after the next 7 generations. Our great grandfathers looked after us, so we have to do what's right and continue that role as it was passed down to us. I've worked like I said, I've been with Mi'kmaq Rights Initiative, and I think I'm at my glory when I'm there because I get to talk to individuals. Oh my God, that's my granddaughter. I picked her up today at the daycare this evening. In any case, as I said, it's upon us today. I'm so proud to be a part of this organization and the passion that everybody has for everything that we do. As I said, we are the last line of defense. It's not because, we have to do this stuff for Canada or individual communities, but we're doing this for Niskom and or Mamigo, which is the world, Mother Nature, Kijino. I really think that if we don't do this as Mi'kmaq, we're contributing somehow at the actual loss of our environment and natural resources and who we are as a people. Sometimes when I look at movies, it kind of freak me out a little bit because they portray the wrong message and who we are. We've always been one with the land, environment, species. We communicate with animals. That's the craziest thing that I find very similar to some movies. You'll see some First Nations talk to animals. I do that regularly. And the craziest thing is when I'm hunting, when I'm not comfortable with if I'm ready, if I'm looking at an animal, whether it's a deer or a moose, and I'm not comfortable, I'm not ready to take it, I basically tell it in Mi'kmaq, Jigalasi, which means to go away, go live your life until you're ready to actually feed our people or sacrifice yourself to us. And I say prayers, and it's very hard to just think that our people sustained this lifestyle for thousands of years, but it's easy to understand when the language itself brings us back to who we are. That's the key. I think unfortunately we've lost so much of it. We're trying to resurrect it right now. Eskizoni is very strong. We have a school dedicated with just Mi'kmaq. You can't speak any other language, just Mi'kmaq. If you go in there and say, "Hey, how are you doing?" the kids themselves will show you the door and tell you you have to leave because you're not speaking Mi'kmaq. That's quite the feat, I think, for children to really understand that. We're in that position today because colonization and everything else that's been a part of us, centralization. We're generations of generational, I guess, trauma has set in. We've lost our language, and through what's been happening with centralization, residential schools, Indian day school, and today's society, you're frowned upon to actually speak your language. Not in communities, but I do a lot of traveling, and the funny thing about it is, if I'm in Europe, you hear some French people talking, or you hear some Germans and English and all these languages circling around you, talking their language. But the crazy thing is, the second you open your mouth and you start talking your language, speaking your language amongst your group, or my wife, they stop. They turn around and look. Say, what is that? So everything goes silent. It's a big statement because they've never heard anything like that. Our language is so unique. So is our culture and who we are as a people. I love it. And this just goes into the passion, right into my blood of who I am and what I stand for in general. So tonight, I'm really happy to join you guys. I'm really excited that I got an invite to do an opening prayer. And I welcome everybody in here that's participating. And I welcome you all to Mi'kma'ki, land of the Mi'kmaq, where we actually feel that this is our land. It doesn't take government to tell us this is unceded territory. We already know. So everything that we do, it's always a fight to educate people who we are, what we are, and what we're doing for our communities and our nation and for Mother Earth, which is the most important, because if we don't have her, we're kind of in trouble. It'll end up like Europe or any other countries around this world that let everything go. We're actually lucky to be around the Maritimes right now, or North America, most parts of North America, where it's actually, like we say, unceded. We practice our traditions. Elders, and I'm an elder too, I feel, because I'm 56 now and I'm not young anymore. I don't run around or do crazy stuff. I've settled down and finally understand why the elders used to say, you're going to settle down someday, that kind of stuff, which is great. But I try to pass it down to my kids as they grow. But anyway, I won't keep this going. I just want to open up with this prayer. It's going to be in Mi'kmaq, and I'll try to translate it a little bit going back. But the hardest thing to do is when you have strong Mi'kmaq, and I do have the old language. I don't have Miklish or anything like that. I try to stay away from words that were somewhat relaxed or laziness. I use English or parts of English to say something. I'd rather not say a word if I can't find a Mi'kmaq word for it. So, it comes straight from the heart. I always tell people, when you speak and you do your opening prayer in Mi'kmaq, the Creator comes into your spirit and tells you actually what to say concerning what you're talking about. And you really actually connect with the souls of whoever's looking or listening to you. It carries that strong connection to what you're being told from the other side. So that's how I feel when I say opening prayers. If anybody knows me, when I do opening prayers, you'll never see me hold a paper or look down on documents or whatever, because I don't do that. I believe that the Creator gives me a message and I pass it on to whomever that's listening. It comes straight from the heart and from the environment of the setting of what we were talking about or what we're going to be talking about. So in saying that, I will proceed. Okay. Kizuk, edawe gisku bisquan, dan waskawidayak. Waskude me glabachtel, ach dan mimiesk, a wises, imajuan, my waskawasik sanwaniktuk, Kizore, Sibul, Sitami dan waskawidayak, dan dacho begin muyagap kill, Kiziduna, Sithamula, Igoli egni, and what you can hear, Mamigo to Kizi, Kizid min Davidem na, Kizid min Ginjana, and Sitko, Gizidun, Sithamula, Wakanik. Kinekemudi nige, Esleda Siko, Bugok, was Espedas number and entered Kamalamuak, that is post la, and Kodamino, Moda Anno. The Modeno, Moda Anno, am Jip Joy, Abachtuk, Mimesk, Wises, Bison, Gomoj, and Sitko, Mrs. Kedweder, Mouth Chip Chisk, Tapoya, Edlasamud, Ilsudamo. When I get them this no my den will up to go. So, well, there's a gist, Delma Vidak, Delgi Kidiadamo, Dan Delion will the Tamamigo, the Yanko Kisku. On one does also Kizuk. Gedu Hajada, Gedu Ladu, Taho, Saudal Den, Dawa, Yinosi, Kizuk. Edo, will you just does no Kamalamunda, Bantalano. Paulia born Marudno, Munamuga born Maruduk, and Maglukuno Koi, but Juliana will be up to Amagizara, Pinagulia Dignity. Well, are you? So, in that, it's like I said, it's very hard to translate, but I asked the Creator to come into where we are tonight and work with us, listen to everybody, and understand that we're all trying to conserve our environment, the waters, the rivers, the trees, the plants, in the water, every living species that contributes to its survival, as it was when the Creator made it for us. He put us on this earth. He made man and he made a woman, which creates a family, and it's interconnection. It's interconnected with everybody else in this world. We all have connections. I always say that it's like a spider web of actions that happen within oceans and in any environment. You pull a spider web at the corner and the whole web shakes. So it's as strong as everybody else, as everybody helps out, or is that strong? Is it? It's only as strong as it's, I guess, how it's made. Only if you actually look at a spider web, you'll understand what I mean. But the spider web is the environment. You clip one piece of that spider web, the other end of it suffers. So eventually you clip a little bit more of it around everywhere, then it loses its integrity. So we lose our functions and our meanings. The world has gone to, it's between pollution and people not caring of our environment around this world. I think we're at the last of the last species or generations where we have to do something. Everybody's seen how much our environment or our world has failed because nobody takes care of it. And it's us through generations of our ancestors that looked after it through our treaties. Thank God for our treaties in Canada and North America. Canada understands it. A lot of times we fight for them, but if we didn't fight for our treaties, then we wouldn't be in a position to protect our land, our resources, and everything around us, because government and other people around this world, whether it's industry or anybody, likes to pull away or clip that spider web. As I said, eventually this world of ours will just collapse. We've seen oceans collapse. If you take a species away from the ocean, a certain species, then others collapse. So it all leads to everything. And as I said, I can't really translate the words that are being used because it's just too strong of a word. In our language, the Creator gave us words that are very distinguishable or direct. It doesn't beat around the bush. It's a very strong language. But I asked our Creator to look after all of us tonight. We're all working for a common goal here. Thank God that we finally, over hundreds of years, we decided to sit down and work together as one people. And without this help from our Creator, I think we wouldn't be in a position right now where we're doing what we're doing. So my English is not that strong. People will always say that it is, but I know it's not, because I only speak Mi'kmaq. You'll very rarely hear me speak English. You're basically forcing me to speak English when I speak English. So generally, I will never translate or even try to translate my words when I say Mi'kmaq prayers, because as I said before, it comes from the heart. It actually comes from your soul. I don't know where it comes from. These words are given to me. And they were given to me when I was a kid, and entrusted to me by my grandparents and my parents. So I'm a very strong advocate of language, because without your language, you basically have nothing. That's your culture. And your culture comes from everything that our Creator has taught us. So thousands of years of words is what we have, unlike the English language or any other language. When the Creator made us, it's very distinguishable what words and language was given to us. So as I said earlier, I love talking to animals. Sometimes they look at me and they nod or do something. It kind of freaks you out, but it's like a movie. But again, I'd like to welcome everybody tonight. And I asked our creator to be open, to enter everybody's heart and their mind, and to make a connection, as I said, like the spider web, that we're all connected. We're all here for a common goal. And hopefully in the future, our goals and our strengths will become stronger. And these guidelines and government agencies that are trying to push us away from one another will only become stronger, because at the end of the day, if we don't work with one another, then what are we doing? We're working for an uncommon goal, and it's one-sided. And at the end of the day, we didn't accomplish anything. So again, thank you. Walalio. Megidedum danwaskavidak. Atignida, Siawi Atignida, Kamlamnu Amsidigalu, Agunjual, Asidedamo, Izuk, Pisquan, Danwaskavidayo, Glaman Mulgiganada this Numsit. Walalio. Thank you.
Willala and Allison, I think I heard abduct in there for ocean. So I know we're getting well on our way. Thank you so much. Just before we get to Sherilyn's presentation, I want to introduce our amazing facilitator, Dr. Heidi Vegan, tonight. Heidi is an assistant professor in management with Dalhousie University. She focuses on leadership development, systemic discrimination, and resiliency. She's got extensive experience working with First Nation leaders and communities with a passion for cultivating self-governing practices and sustainable communities. I'm going to turn it over to you for a bit, Heidi. Thank you guys so much. Llewellyn.
Perfect. Thank you for the introduction. It's very nice. And I'm most excited about introducing our guest speaker for today. And as we move forward, it's just a reminder that if anybody happens to find themselves coming off of mute, you can just put yourself back on mute. And that way we give that full show to Sherilyn. Sherilyn, I'm delighted that you'll be introducing some of the concepts around IPCAs to us, because I think that when we had our sessions last year, we had very robust discussions around IPCAs. And one of the big questions that always came out is, could I understand differences and understand how these came to be? So I think this is a perfectly timed webinar. So Sherilyn is the Consultation Project Support Officer for Gwillimabusawak Negotiation Office. And she's a former forester and teacher, an Ilnu woman, dedicates herself to the implementation of Ilnu rights and protection of flora and fauna. Sherilyn grew up on the coast of Newfoundland, but often found herself barefoot, traversing through the forest, foraging with her sisters and exploring the land. Her great aspiration for the forest as a holistic entity was instilled from a young age by her nukum and later by her adoptive father, from whom she was introduced to the world of cultural vegetation. Sherilyn is a proud mother, sister, and daughter, and a dedicated guardian of the land. So Sherilyn, welcome to our webinar. Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to you to be able to put your presentation up and guide us through a wonderful conversation.
Well, Ellen, Heidi, for that beautiful introduction. As Heidi alluded to, Sherilyn Deloisi, Ilugwe Gumugmagluaswahan. My name is Sherilyn Young. I work for KMKNO as a Consultation Project Support Officer. I'm going to try and share my screen and hope that this goes smoothly. Okay, so Rising Together, and then the IPCAs are Indigenous, Protected, and Conserved Areas. And when I say Rising Together, it's because we are doing this on a land base where we have to understand the land together, and we have to rise and create this together. When we walk through a forested stand and we look up into the canopy, the tree canopy, we often, at least for myself, I often find myself gazing up and just in admiration, because when we look up there, we notice that the trees are not within each other's space. They give each other space, they give each other respect. And they do that because they acknowledge that holistically together, they have to live together, they have to survive together, they have to thrive together. And if they do not do this together, they do not do. Okay, so vision and masterpiece. So what is an IPCA? Well, an IPCA is an Indigenous, Protected, and Conserved Area. And these are lands and waters where Indigenous governments have the responsibility and the primary role in protecting and conserving ecosystems through Indigenous laws, governance, and knowledge systems. Cultural and language are at the heart and soul of IPCAs. And IPCAs are grounded in legend. For example, Glooskap's Cave, the center of the universe, and also Glooskap's final resting place. This IPCA is a very challenging location to traverse, but it's a sacred area that has been absolutely filled with the energy of our ancestors. And take, for example, the Mercy Corridor, where portage routes were common, taking Mi'kmaq to sacred places. It's no secret to the Mi'kmaq that the great and overwhelming presence of our ancestors is still there. Even to this day, we can feel them. So these are just two of many areas within Mi'kma'ki that hold boundless significance, tying our people, the Mi'kmaq, the Olnu, back to the land, back to the waters. And while they will vary from nation to nation, all IPCAs should be made up of the same components. They are Indigenous-led, they represent a long-term commitment to conservation, and they elevate Indigenous rights, responsibilities, and ways of being. This land is Mi'kma'ki, and this land deserves the respect and care. Who are the community by the community? Indigenous-led. All IPCAs shall be Indigenous-led. Here in Nova Scotia Mi'kma'ki, that responsibility is placed on our Mi'kmaq communities, our Mi'kmaq youth, earth keepers, guardians, elders, knowledge holders, and our leadership. Mi'kmaq are the stewards of the land and have been here since time immemorial. So who better to lead, develop, and govern this process? IPCAs in Nova Scotia are an assembly-led and approved process and are initialized by Mi'kmaq organizations. So that would be the Confederacy of Mainland Mi'kmaq, the Unama'ki Institute of Natural Resources, Gulmuk Magluaswahan Negotiation Office, Eskasoni Wildlife, just to mention some. But they're not solely developed by these organizations, and they are not siloed into any particular organization. Each organization provides support where needed for the other. Conservation efforts and guiding principles. So when we think of conservation, we are immediately brought back to our ways of being and those guiding principles that make up our everyday choices, whether it be waking up and having that first cup of coffee after a much needed smudge and choosing a greener, friendlier product, or the way we walk and connect with the land, carefully symbiotically choosing which entity will become that beautifully twisted cane. We listen and we choose each other. Nudukumlik, the right to access and use resources in a way, that gifts from the creator survive for future generations. That's when we look back to what Allison was just saying about the 7 generations, how we have to ensure that what is on the land will be here for 7 generations, just as our grandfathers and our great-grandfathers and our great-grandmothers has done that for us. I noticed a typo here just now. This should be Sespede and Diminish Gimmick Gnu, which means taking care and responsibility for our communities and our Mother Earth. So I like to say that we started in a circle, living symbiotically with those beneath and above the soil. At some point, we were pushed out of that circle and we grew into a world of management. We do not manage the land. We are here for such a short period of time as individuals in comparison to some of those other entities, those grandmother trees. But what we do here does count as individuals. What we choose to do with our time can make a difference. So while colonialism has impacted our ability, we must relearn the ways of taking care of the earth and taking care of each other. Wadahani wasodig mist gizadahan. We are spiritually connected to all parts of the creation, and relationships are sacred. So have you ever walked into an area and you just knew your ancestors were there? Or perhaps for me, you've walked onto a clear cut and you felt the sadness echoing from the soil beneath your feet. We've seen so many sites robbed of their resources, robbed of their lives, and the number of species at risk continue to rise. Forest health, marine health continues to decline. We've seen reports and we've heard the cries. So we must consider the consequences of our actions to ensure that all life thrives, not just lives. Edawaktamuk, co-learning between the settlers and Indigenous people. Beneficial outcomes are more likely when we use 2 or more perspectives. I live from the perspective of 2 eyes. I have a European mother and an Ulnu father. I grew up in a Mi'kmaq family. I have had the very unique opportunity to see things from a Western and traditional point of view. Even the work I do as an individual on behalf of Gwilmuk Magluaswahan I use the assistance of a Western resource. The work our teams do benefit from two-eyed seeing. And further, the foundation of two-eyed seeing rests on the principles of collaboration, co-learning, and the co-production of knowledge. Gipmich, we must use traditional Mi'kmaq ways to carry out everything we do. It doesn't need an explanation. Mukmelek Suwalu, Mijuwejij. I apologize. My Mi'kmaq is not as good as Allison's, and I'm still learning Ilnuganamasi. So never underestimate the ability of a child sorry.
Oh, sorry, guys. Sorry.
No, that's no worries. Never underestimate the ability of a child and or the knowledge that they possess. You'll notice here that the picture on the slide, this is my beautiful boy and his grandmother. Here he is visibly engaged in a story that she's telling about bears. We had been talking about bears that entire day, and I'm a large fan of bears. This child is and will be a wealth of knowledge, as all of our children are. And when we consider these principles for IPCAs and partnerships within IPCAs, we are building the foundation of Mi'kmaq values of equality, equity, and Nudukulmik, and the principles of two-eyed seeing. Guidance on how to collaborate effectively is therefore done by engaging early. So co-development of the project would be expected. Relevance of the project is key for our participation. Partnerships must be based on equality. And the preferred project governance arrangement would be a steering committee. But we must also be aware that some projects may involve a local ethics watch review, and this will take time. I work on a number of different types of projects. IPCAs is just one of the files that I work on. And I will say that I've done a number of Mi'kmaq Ethics Watch, and they can take upwards to 6 months just to get a response. Budgeting, as well as research, must have minimal impacts to the environment. Resources to hire a community liaison that has been successful in the past, and we would continue to recommend that. Co-authorship of any primary publications is expected, and any and all project-related communication projects must be done collaboratively. Only rights. Our rights are future. It is our right to preserve, conserve, and protect not just the land that we live on, but also the land that we have lived on, what has traditionally been ours. Colonialism has made this difficult over the years, changing the land, fertilizing forests, and forcing people to reservations. And while the initial reservations were not ideal for Ulnu, these areas have now become rich in biodiversity. In fact, they now make up over 80% of the planet's biodiversity based on the measures of richness and variety. So this means the Mi'kmaq can help Canada meet its international commitments. Paris Agreement, Convention on Biological Diversity, and the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. We'll move on now to the decision-making framework. And I'd like to take a moment here. I noticed Trish Nash was on the call, and I'd like to take a moment here to thank her. So we've been working on, and I've been asked to do a number of these presentations, and I did reach out to CMM and UINR for any support that they might be able to give with these presentations. And Trish was kind enough to send along a presentation, so I did pull from her as well as fill in the presentation myself. So we'll start with governance. This IPCA process will be Mi'kmaq led, and it will respect the natural law. Human involvement will be dependent on the safety of the area, but the Mi'kmaq presence should be welcomed. So there will be challenges such as acquisition of natural territories. We've seen that in Glooscap's Cave, but through leadership and support, we're working to overcome those. Each site location will be different, and there will be many site limitations due to the terrains of the different types of areas. Additionally, we want to ensure that these areas are being respected because we do not always have the capacity to be there 100% of the time. Visitation of the areas may be limited or rely on a guided tour. Values. The sites will display a symbiotic and a concentric relationships. They will have a language component, storytelling will be welcome, and Mi'kmaq culture should be strongly represented. Education. We have an opportunity here to revitalize our culture, our language, and learning through land stewardship and two-eyed seeing. Green economy. Land degradation with an IPCA should not occur under any circumstance. These are areas that have been identified as having extreme cultural significance. Thus, no I will apologize. I'm sorry, I'm having a little bit of difficulty speaking. No site alteration should occur. Cultural practices, however, can occur. So here within Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq, there have been a number of IPCAs that have been developed, and I'm not sure if anyone here on the call recognizes this picture. This is St. Paul's Island, and it would have been known as the halfway point between Unama'ki and Newfoundland, whereby Mi'kmaq would have stopped and rested before proceeding onwards to Newfoundland. I had the opportunity to go to this island for research over the summer, and my team and I noted a number of potential sites as well as medicines on the land, and it's absolutely outstanding. Glooscap's Cave Mountain, the Eskasoni Watershed, Boat Harbor, Debert, Bedford Petroglyphs, Gaspereau Lake, and Lake Rossignol, the Wildcat, Pond Hook, and Medway River IPCAs are all IPCAs that are currently under development or near completion or have been completed. IPCAs and MPAs, how do they relate? In plain text, water is life. It's not so simple to silo the two and act as if one does not impact the other. What happens up in the watershed, be it pollution, carbon, or sedimentation, ultimately will end up in the marine environment. And that marine environment will, through climate, impact what happens on the land. Further, when we consider those aquatic species who live within both marine and freshwater habitats, then they move with them portions of their environments, and their environments impact their livelihoods. KMKNO support. So our involvement will look differently depending on the type of request, but we have provided and displayed, the display types of support. Today, our GIS specialist, and I will not drop his name here today because he does not like that, Archaeological Resource Department, lands officer, and lawyers, and myself are often pulled in depending on the need or type of request. So boots on the ground. This is my personal favorite. For those of you who know me, who are on this call, you know that when I'm in the forest, I'm in my element. This is a hands-on approach whereby we're actually able to explore the land and look for sites of significance. These sites can be identified through biocultural indicators, previous data collected, known archaeological information, or by having a keen eye. We're also dependent on information sharing and storytelling. So when I speak of biocultural indicators, I'm referring to those indicators are culturally relevant and comprehensive values and priorities across Mi'kmaq culture within a natural land base, and those specifically that promote social, cultural, and ecological resistance. Technical support. We use a number of tools that aid us in identifying areas, and we're able to delineate those areas then and propose boundaries of a specific IPCA, again, depending on the value that has been under consideration. Process development and aid. So that's where our amazing legal department comes in and our negotiations department comes in, and they sit down and start working on and developing processes as to how an IPCA can be developed within the province. Community support, we sit in on community sessions, we participate as much as we can. We will take community members out into the field. I've taken individuals out into the field and have done medicine walks with them, just to teach them a little bit more about the land and to teach them a little bit more about the land base that they're on. We also take questions from community. And this isn't a limit to what we do at our office. Our work is endless. Like I said, it's just one of my files that I work on. We have an incredible team of very hardworking people, and I'm proud to be a member of this team. So Walalio, thank you all for taking the time to listen to me speak a little bit here about IPCAs. I hope there are some questions, and I hope that I'm able to answer them here for you today. If I'm not, I will find the answer for you.
Thank you so much, Sherilyn. And so as Sherilyn mentioned, this is an opportunity to ask questions. So if you want to either put your hand up to be able to let us know that you want to ask a question, or just put something into the chat box, I'll be looking for those questions. And at the same time, there are other people, as you mentioned, on the call. So perhaps somebody wants to contribute into some of those answers. That's always welcome as well. So we'll look to see if anybody has any questions about the content, the IPCAs, the MPAs, and all of the beautiful locations that we have. And one of the things I'll just maybe put this over, well, I know some people will be typing, but a lot of times when I'm working on IPCAs and MPAs, somebody will ask me the question around, what are the key differences in terms of when it's Indigenous led versus when it is not, for example, with an MPA. I didn't know if you wanted to comment on that.
I'm sorry, Heidi, was that question for me?
Yes, it was.
Would you mind repeating yourself, please?
Yeah, just the key difference between when something is Indigenous led, and then, for example, when something is you look at an IPCA versus an MPA. So a lot of times everybody will like to understand, what does it mean to be Indigenous led versus when it's sort of co-led?
So an Indigenous led project, and Trish, you're also on the call here. So I'll be happy to pull you in at any point in time. But an Indigenous-led project is when our projects are solely led by Indigenous. So that's solely led by our Mi'kmaq communities and our leadership. Whereas a co-management type of project, and we do work on these too, we're working with a proponent. So we'll be working with either the province, or we'll be working with parks, or even ECCC to develop a project that then kind of gets put out there. I'm sorry, Heidi, I'm not doing this any justice.
I think you're doing a great job. I know that Trish is there, and so is Beck, and everybody is there. If anybody wants to add into the conversation, I will let you know that Stacy sends her admiration of your work, just to let you know in the chat box there that your work doesn't go unnoticed. I love how informing this webinar is. So that's always a nice testament to what you've shared.
Well, Ellen, Stacy, Beck, I do see your question here as well. So we started looking at the potential of St. Paul's becoming an IPCA in the future. So St. Paul's Island right now is being up for consideration under ECCC as a protected wilderness area. And I believe it's actually in that process. So it will become a protected wilderness area. So this area, because of its cultural significance, we would like to also turn that area into an IPCA. And that idea came from Trish. She's on the call here once again. So we're working now and taking our process documents, and we're working with ECCC to see how we can open up that conversation first, and then take this, because it is on a federal land base now, and then take this with ECCC to work together to not only have it as a protected wilderness area, but to have it as an IPCA. So the process document that I was referring to before, we do have access to that. And Beck, I can send you, I believe I can send you a copy of that. But we would be working off of something similar to that. We would just have to work it so that it's for federal and not provincial.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks so much, Sherilyn. I'm always curious doing the webinar series and learning more about how important they are and how timely IPCAs can be in our, climate and political climate. I'm always curious how it starts. Who identifies a site? Who decides what level or what tool we should use for the site? And so I'm just always curious about how the process really works while you're sitting at your desk. What happens?
Community identifies the site. We, if we are pulled in and ask for support, we look for values on the site, and we've done that throughout the summer. Beck, you were with us, whereby we actually went physically onto the island. We traversed it. We looked for medicines. We looked for potential areas of cultural significance, as well as overnight sites, etc. And then that site then has to go through everything that we do has to go through the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs. So once we have enough information and enough to back us up, we can now then take it to the Assembly of Nova Scotia Mi'kmaq Chiefs and explain to them just why we would like to have this area as an IPCA. Once we have that completed, we can then take it and start working through that process document that I was speaking of, to actually have that developed into an IPCA. Does that better answer your question, Beck?
Absolutely. It all starts with community. Willella and Sherilyn.
With community. Everything starts with community.
So Sherilyn, there's one of the questions that came up in a different place, but isn't here tonight, but I'm going to introduce it, is just sort of where your passion came. You mentioned about your Nukam, you mentioned about your adoptive father, but just how you became involved in IPCAs directly, and then what you love most about it.
It all starts around that kitchen table with the smell of the sage and the smell of the sweetgrass burning, with my Nogam passing me an orange, because I remember the oranges so well. And I remember her teaching me that we had to respect the land, when we had to respect what we were walking on. When I was 8, unfortunately, I wasn't able to stay with my biological family. There was a lot of hurt there. My grandmother, my Nogam, she was a residential school survivor. So there was a lot of challenges at home. When I was 8, I was adopted into a Mi'kmaq family, absolutely beautiful family, where my dad would take me out into the woods all the time. And again, he would echo that. We must protect our land. We must protect and preserve. He was actually the first person to show me a medicine. Actually, balsam fir. Balsam fir gets so overlooked in this province. And it's absolutely a wonderful species. So I had been running through the forest. I have so many scars and cuts and bruises, but I had been running through the forest, and I remember I had a twig hook into the side of my cheek, and it left a little bit of a gash. And I remember my dad, he walked up to the tree, to the balsam fir, and he found a nice big sap bubble. He stuck his nail into it, scooped it up, and just rubbed it on my face. Well, that healed so fast. So it was little things like that, and learning how to respect the land and learning how to live symbiotically with that land, that then developed my passion for being on the land base, but also really wanted to be that guardian, that person who can protect it in the future, and who can inform others of owning rights and why we are here and what we are doing. Allison said earlier that he talks to the animals, and you may have seen me chuckle a little bit because I do this too. When I was in BC, I remember the bears. There were so many bears everywhere, but there's this one particular bear. Every morning, this bear would walk out and he would greet me, and he would put his head up like this, and I would put my head up like that, and we would walk side by side. Him about 5 meters away from me, not very far at all. And then the trail forked, it veered off. So he would veer off to the right, I would veer off to the left every single morning. And I think about that all the time. So I think for me, it's just that acknowledgement of that connection with the land, that connection with the animals, and that acknowledgement that we have to start living symbiotically with our land base again, because if we don't, we're not going to have it. We're going to lose it. We're losing our culture already. We're trying to revitalize it. We've lost our language. We're trying to revitalize that. But now even our forest health is in decline. So if we don't start protecting it, we don't start protecting these land bases, especially these sacred land bases, we're going to lose them. And if we lose these sacred land bases, we lose our culture.
Thank you for that. And I was sharing as well with Alison. I also have spoken to animals before, and now I can openly admit it with everybody else. So beyond just my puppy in the house. I will go over to the comments section and just, there's a few things there. So Leah also was asking, would the biocultural indicators be like traditional medicines and archaeological artifacts, or is it something else?
Yep. So a biocultural indicator is anything on the land base that in plain text Mi'kmaq would use. So you may have noticed in one of the pictures in the slideshow that I had displayed, there was a oddly shaped tree. It looked quite like the shape of a 4. I found this, it was a sugar maple. She was approximately 250 years old. She's absolutely outstanding. I found this while I was working as a forester. And I noted that she was in a very wet, kind of steep area. So I remember hearing the stories from my Nogam, and I remember hearing the stories from my dad, just talking about how these trees would guide us to sacred areas, so prayer areas. My grandmother used to call them prayer trees. Some other people would call them tong trees. This is an example, it's a great example of a biocultural indicator. It's something that's still alive. It's a living artifact, in fact. But it's still present on the land base, and it's something that we may not do anymore, but it's something that's still there that has significance to Olnu, to Mi'kmaq.
Thanks so much, Sherilyn. And Leah, you can certainly add if there's anything you wanted to expand on that story. I'll guide you over to the comment sections for a moment, Sherilyn. You'll see from Alison that there's comments about the privilege of seeing a child as they come to about 8 years old in the Highlands, become the caretakers of the Glooscap Cave, which means that we do have a story still to come from Alison in future webinars. So love that. And then Stacy also is referencing her dialogue with the animals as a child with her grandmother and grandfather. So I think, and so much about medicines and stories that she's learned from that. So you're really touching the hearts of everybody on the line. We have a few more minutes. Yeah, sorry, we have a few more minutes, to take any questions or anything anybody wants to ask before we're going to switch over to our Mi'kmaq only section. So I just want to check in to make sure there's usually, if there's a question you have, somebody else has it too. So Krista's just put up, how do you find the balance between protecting an IPCA site and also allowing the site to be used for its cultural purposes?
I think that is a beautiful question, Krista. So I'll take you to the example of Wisco. So Wisco now is an endangered species within this province. There are fewer than 12 seed trees left. Sorry, I will I'll continuously go back to trees because I know trees. And as of right now, a lot of our seed trees that we are aware of, they're not producing seed because these trees are now, they're very stressed. So there's not a lot within Western science known about it, but we have that knowledge through our grandparents and through our great grandparents of these particular species. So in the past, what we would do, and traditionally what we would do with these particular species is, again, I'll take you back to listening to the forest. We listen to these sites. We would sit there and we would observe the site, and we would look at the tree, and we would look at the environment, and we would say, is this a healthy species to harvest, or is this particular Wisco getting enough light because they're not particularly shade tolerant? And we would promote the growth of that particular tree. Or we would remove other Wisco that say we're healthy enough or suitable enough for crafting, but still not degrading the site. So we wouldn't take more than we should from that land base. We would make sure that there was enough left for the 7 generations to come in the future, just as our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and great-great-grandparents had left enough for us for the 7 generations in their future. Does that answer your question, Krista?
Perfect. So at this point, I don't see any other questions from the general group. So I'm going to come back to Beck for a moment, just to close out this part before we shift over to what we call our Mi'kmaq conversation section.
Thank you, Sherilyn. Thanks, Heidi. So at this point, folks, we're going to spend the last 30 minutes of the webinar with a Mi'kmaq only group of participants. We're really hoping that this can facilitate not only some really great Q&A and some discussion, but also focus on some relationship building between our speaker and between the different participants tonight. So Heidi, I believe we've got 1 minute here to sort of let people filter out, but Wilaliyok, thank you so much to everyone for participating. And we did have a door prize for tonight, and so we do have a winner. And so I've got everybody's email, and I'll reach out to the lucky winner of the door prize. We have Mi'kmaq art and crafts that we're supporting through this webinar series, and those will be the gifts given out. So congratulations to our door prize winner. Thank you so much to everybody. And for those of you in our Mi'kmaq participation group, I look forward to hearing a little bit more from you. And Sherilyn, as always, everything you say is beautiful. So I hope for another half hour of conversation.
And we have another webinar coming up as well. So I think we're looking at maybe that you can announce the date and we can let people know that it's coming.
Absolutely. While people filter out, I can double check on that.
And we'll be sending out information to everybody as well. So we'll continue to promote all the wonderful webinars. So
all the posters from our KMKNO comms team, they're amazing, and they'll be coming out, especially to promote our next webinar from Wan Lee. They're from Assembly of First Nations, and they're going to be speaking to us at the same time as this one, but on January 23rd. And that'll be on their new report on IPCAs, I believe. So that'll be coming up, and stay tuned on all the channels that you saw this poster. There'll be another with a different picture and a different speaker, January 23rd.